This tutorial is for Section 2, Cellular Transport and Communication, number 31. A person with swollen gums rinses his mouth with warm salt water and the swelling decreases. Which has occurred? So we're talking about water here. And so whenever you see water in a question, more than likely it's going to be an osmosis question. And so one good approach to this, if you are not provided with a diagram, is to go ahead and draw this out. And so we'll label the cell as the gum cell. And then it says that we have exposed those gum cells to salt water. The way to remember this is that water is always going to flow to the region where the most salt or sugar is. And so in this case, since we're exposing the gum cells to a saltwater solution, the water is going to leave the gum cell and go into the solution. When the water leaves the gum cell, then the cell will decrease in size, and so the swelling decreases. So if we look at our answer choices here, it says the swollen gums have absorbed the saltwater solution, and that's not what happens at all. So the salt does not move, which means the salt water does not move. We're just looking at the water moving. The second answer choice there, the salt water lowers the temperature of the water in the gums. Temperature has absolutely nothing to do with what this question is asking. The next answer choice says the salt in the solution has moved against the concentration gradient. So if it's against, that refers to the type of transport that we learned about known as active transport. And active transport requires energy in the form of ATP. And what we're looking at with the movement of water is osmosis, which is passive transport and does not require any energy in the form of ATP. The last answer choice, the water in the gums, has moved from a high concentration of water to a low concentration of water, would be the explanation why a person rinsing in salt water decreases the swelling in their gums. 32, which is an example of osmosis. So again, osmosis, we want to think about the movement of water. So the first answer choice says potassium ions moving in and out of a cell. That's not water. Carbon dioxide moving into the leaves of a plant. Carbon dioxide is not water. Oxygen moving into the bloodstream of the lungs. Oxygen is not water. Last but not least, water moving into the root cells of a plant. That is osmosis. 33. Sandworms are annelid worms that live on the seafloor. They absorb oxygen and excrete waste through their skin. Which characteristic would best help that worm carry out their functions? So we're talking about absorption and how they absorb oxygen and excrete waste through their skin. And what would allow them to be very efficient at doing this is having a large surface area to volume ratio. So large surface area to volume allows transport to occur more easily. 34, a freshwater plant. And so here we go again with water. Fresh water is placed in salt water. So again, they did not give us a diagram here. So we're going to say that this is a freshwater, and I didn't make it a square, but that is a freshwater plant cell. So freshwater inside the cell. And we place that into a saltwater solution, and the same rule applies. Water is going to move from the cell to the solution because water always goes to where the higher concentration of salt is. So we look at our answer choices. They will swell. No, the cell's not going to swell because water's leaving it. So that allows us to mark out the first two answer choices. Option 3, they will shrink because water will move out of them. That is absolutely the correct answer. Option 4, they will shrink because salt will move out of them. Again, when we're looking at Water, we're not looking at anything moving except water, and that is an osmosis problem. So the salt doesn't move, and there wasn't even any salt in them to move out because the cell itself was fresh water. 35, if energy is needed to move materials into or out of a cell, and again, energy, when we talk about energy, we are talking about ATP. Energy and ATP can actually be used interchangeably. So, whenever we're talking about energy being needed to move something, we're talking about active transport. So, active transport uses ATP. Passive transport, no ATP is needed, and both osmosis and diffusion are forms of passive transport. 36. Which would be the best evidence that a cell is using active transport? So, again, when you see active transport, I want you to think of ATP to move a substance across its cell membrane. Substances are moving rapidly. Look at that first answer choice. So just because energy is needed doesn't really have anything to do with the speed. How fast or slow something moves depends much more on the concentration than whether or not it's active or passive. Then look at this answer choice. Option 2, ATP is being rapidly consumed near the cell membrane. That would be the best evidence that active transport is being used to move a substance across a membrane. Option 3, substances are moving from high to low. That's incorrect because if things are moving from high to low, that indicates passive transport, and we are dealing with active transport. Option 4, substances are moving through channels in the cell membrane. Also inaccurate because if we're moving through channels, that means we are going through passive transport in the form of facilitated diffusion.